Hello guys, and welcome back to the How to Animate YouTube channel. So if you've been following this series, you know I've been animating this Horizon inspired cutscene, and most of it is still just come out of blocking phase, so I've only really polished the first kind of 80 frames. So I'll be continuing on with the polish pass during this, and just giving you some tips on how I polish animations up to final. So I'm going to mask off back to 100. So I've done a couple of little edits off camera here. I wasn't too happy with the little hop that the dinosaur did, so I changed that to have him support his weight all the way through this. The stomp comes down. I then put this hand down here to support his weight as he lifts the back foot up, and then steps. And this was for a couple of reasons. I wasn't too keen on the hop, he looked a little bit goofy, and also this leg was also around about here, and it was just a really bad pose and silhouette. I couldn't really make it work, so I needed a way to basically lift this back foot up. It's still a bit rough, but I'll come back and polish this to final later on. It's I'm trying to get everything up to a first pass kind of functional level at the moment. So right, so next move we've got is him rearing back in anticipation for the bite. So I'm going to polish this entire section here. So first thing to address is I'm not too keen on this pose now. It's just something about it. I think it's mostly the way the legs and the balance is. It just looks a little bit wrong. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of modify this kind of pose here on him. Let's get it looking a little bit better. So I think it's mostly just this shape here I'm not keen on. This is quite a strong pose. Looks like there's a lot of weight supporting, but this one is just kind of stuck out. So what I'll do is just kind of modify this control here. So this one here basically just controls the upper part of the leg. So around about here, I'm just going to kind of strengthen it a little bit by bringing it out to about here. We do have a step here as well, a small step back, so I do need to bring his weight over onto this leg anyway, so I'm just going to bring it over here like that. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is trying to get his weight over to the right, because obviously to lift this leg up he needs his weight over, shifted over. So I'll do this via the graph header. Okay, so let's have a look. We want him to shift his weight over around about here. So I'm going to get a bit of a curve in it. It doesn't need to be too extreme. It's a small step, but it does need to be there. So getting his weight over to the right, allowing that foot then to lift up. Okay, I'm going to address the up and down as well, because obviously it feels super light at this point. So I've got an up position here, and I'm not too sure why. This should actually be a more extreme down position. So I'm going to keep him level here, anticipate down, ready for the step. This is going to be an up position here, and then his weight's going to settle, so I'll put another key there and just give a bit more weight to the lower part. Okay, so I think that will work a little bit better. I'm going to give it even more, I think. Try and get a bit more of a bouncing ball shape to that. Okay, now we've got a bit of a horrible kind of pose-to-pose situation going on here, where he's in this pose. He kind of just rears straight up. You see how there's nothing kind of, you know, offset or broke down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a drag. So what I'm going to do is around about here, I'm going to delay that by a couple of frames and then break it down so that he's basically, his back half is going to raise up before his front half. So the weight of the head is kind of coming down. It's kind of the opposite to what I've done for the raw. So with the raw, you remember we had it so that he led with the head. On the way back up, I don't want to do the same thing, so I'm going to have it drag. So the upper half of him is going to basically lead the action. The lower half is then going to drag down like so, and then it's just a case of making sure that the breakdown is in the right place for that to happen. Okay, then I can feed that into the head as well. So head is roaring at this point, stops roaring, and then I'm going to break that down and just drag that head a little bit more along that line. Okay, so it's starting to feel a little bit better. Okay, he's very static in the back here. You see it's just kind of rotating up. So what I might do is just take a look at the translate and rotate. So I basically don't want these things to be happening at the same time. I want his weight to drop and then probably offset all of this stuff by a couple of frames. And I'm just going to smooth this out because it's too many keys and I don't need that many keys there. There we go. So I'm starting to, if we look at it from the side, starting to add a little bit of offset in there. I'm just going to feed it down a little bit further into this hierarchy, so this one here dips down as 2, and put a little bit of an overshoot on that as well. Okay, now what I need to do is sort out this back section. So I want this to keep moving. So again, this is a downside of FK spine, being that I can't translate this around. So I'm starting to somewhat regret being in FK spine through this first section, but I can animate it. It's just going to be a little bit harder to get some of the shapes that I want. Okay, so I'm just going to keep this back section nice and alive, and we do have a foot lift here that I need to address with the rotation of this. So what I'm going to do is rotate back this way during the foot lift as well. Get that hip up so it's actually lifting up that foot. Okay, and then just keep this back section moving. Something like that. Again, I'm still working pretty rough. I'm just kind of guessing out what I need. It's always good to work into it as much as you can during this first pass stage. Cool, let's have a look at it from the camera because that's the only view that's really important. Okay, so that's starting to feel a lot better. The transition between here and here, like the head drag, I quite like. There's not much of an arc to it, but I don't know if I want much of an arc to it. You can try. So what I mean is, it's here. If you sort of track what the nose is doing, basically, it comes down and up very straight. So what I might do is just have it come over to the right slightly, just to build a bit of an arc. So if we was to do a motion trail on here, you'll see from about here the arc is coming through. So I'm just going to push that a little bit further. I quite like that. Over to the right. So it comes around and then it hooks on itself. So I don't know if you can see this because there's lines everywhere, but basically the arc is this, comes around and then hooks back on itself. Okay, just makes for a nicer line of action coming through. Alright, so I've got the anticipation for the bite looking pretty good. So I'm going to work on the next part, which is him coming forward and attempting to bite her. So with this, got some very weird stuff happening with the feet here that I need to address. Alright, so he's mostly kicking off this back foot here. So first thing to do is just keep this foot on the floor as long as I can. Okay, and then need to start breaking this down as well, because it's going to be up at this point. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And this foot here is really important that I get a nice kind of roll off. You see the way it starts here and it just kind of comes up. So again, I'm just going to delay this foot coming off the floor, and then I'm looking for it to actually snap out like this so I can actually start editing into it. So what I do is I use a bit of roll here just to stop it locking out. Okay, and I think this could be a little bit further along. Okay, then I'm just going to animate the toes. Just going to reduce this clipping here so the shape I'm after is a bit more like this. So I'm going to push the toes down into the floor and then counter rotate them back. It's only really for a couple of frames you're going to see this, but it does make all the difference. So you get a nice roll there. Okay, so basically just need to copy that pose. Or maybe even just stretch that along a little bit. Still not too keen about where it ends up. I don't know if it needs to come up that high, to be honest. Maybe about there. I'm just going to reduce the amount of roll because this looks a little bit funny. I'd rather roll the toes back and get more of a claw shape than actually sort of hyperextend that ankle. Yeah, so during the breakdown here I'll basically create a nicer kind of claw shape. Probably actually bring them forward here. Like this, and then just counter rotate these parts back. So this is going to be seen from the front, so I'm just really posing from this angle to make sure it looks good. Okay, let's have a look at it in camera because I want to see how much of these feet you actually see. Alright, one thing that's really weird is this foot here comes over to the left, like that. It looks really strange. Where it should be kind of kicking off, so let's take a look. Yeah, so basically I don't want this kind of shape. I almost want it to come out the other way a little bit. So this would actually come along here like this. It does look a bit odd the way this foot kind of stretches towards the camera. Don't think the camera's doing me any favours here. I think it might be a bit too far forward as well. Although he looks imbalanced there, it just looks really strange in the camera. Okay, what I might do is just twist it that way a little bit. That should help. And then kind of feed that a little bit into the breakdown. point of this part here is to make sure he feels off balance, so he's kind of overcommitted to the bite and missed, and that's what gives her the opening. So I might have to do a couple more footsteps here just as he attempts to correct his balance. Okay, let's see if that rotation's helped. Yeah, that's definitely more comfortable on the camera there. Cool. Alright, because it's a step, don't want to move the camera. Because he steps with his foot first, I need to bring his weight over slightly, but I don't want to mess with the bite itself too much. Oh, we've already got a bit of a left there, so I'm just going to increase that. His weight then comes over, I'm just going to smooth that out. So I want him to come nice and close for the bite. Yeah, this foot here is still not right. Let me just delete that. And just maybe go smaller with it. Doesn't need to be. Yeah, this happens sometimes when you're trying to pose to camera. It just doesn't quite work. You just have to kind of keep working into it. Okay, that's a bit nicer. Delay it a little bit more there. Okay, let's have a look at that. Yeah, I think that's better. Just looking at this back foot here and the way it isn't rolling off very nice from the camera view. Just tear this off here. Okay, so I've just been sort of analysing this movement, and this is probably going to be one of the hardest parts of the animation to get right, because animating a dinosaur is one thing, animating a off-balance dinosaur is another thing. So what I've done is basically modified the up and downs here, so we've got a bit more of a bounce. You see it looks very sort of mechanical at the moment. Next thing I'm going to do is just offset the rotates so they kind of match. So I'm going to bring these two curves up, and then looking at what the translate's doing, I'm just going to add keys to the rotate X to make sure that these are basically in the same place for now. So as he comes in for the bite, this is all fine, and then we've got our first down position here. So first position is here. So what I want to do is basically rotate down a couple of frames after, and I'll just push that up. So we get our translate hitting here, then we get our rotate down. I want to make sure it doesn't go through the floor. I'll probably need to edit the body afterwards to stop that happening. We then have our up position here, so what I'll do is I'll offset that by 2 more frames. So we get our highest point here, translation wise. We've got another down position here, so I don't need that. And I'm going to rotate him down and offset by 2 frames there. Okay, we've got an up position here, so again I'm just going to offset that by 2 frames. Jumps across, you'll still be coming down at that point. Okay, and then I'll just work up until here, because this part here where he's stumbling and translating over to the side also needs to be addressed, because it looks kind of good in camera, but the actual mechanics of it are a little bit weird, because he's thrown himself forward. Why would he then suddenly go off to the right? So what I'm going to have to do is basically keep him rotating towards her, so it's almost like he's missed his foot in and it's kind of almost slipped, and that's why he corrects and goes back this way, ready for the throw. Okay, so all these little things are kind of working against me, and I kind of need to get the mechanics right first of all. So to do this, I'm just gonna keep working at this cog until I get it right. So it's starting to get a nice bit of overlap in action. I'm just gonna put another key in there just to delay that a little bit. Okay, it's maybe a little bit sharp. I'm just gonna move that along there. Okay, that's a little bit too extreme. Okay, so that kind of base movement there is not too bad. So what I'm going to do now is try and sort the feet out a little bit. So obviously we've got some foot slides here that we don't want. So foot basically lands here and then is stuck until the next step, so it shouldn't be sliding at all. Can start moving about here, I guess, because this foot is almost to the floor, so I'm just going to speed up. Yeah, this foot really takes its time. And it's got an ugly breakdown as well, so I'm just going to fix that. Okay, yeah, all this can be a little bit quicker. Getting into position. Okay, it's going to break this foot down. Oh, it's already got a breakdown. Okay, make it a little bit higher. Cool. Right, I'm just going to check the camera, make sure that I've not messed anything up too badly. Yeah, in the camera I kind of get away with it, but I still want to make sure the actual mechanics of it are kind of correct in perspective, because I think it will end up looking better in this view anyway. So goal here now is to have a look at the rotate Y, because I basically want his momentum going this way and this way, but it's the kind of weight of the creature that's making him kind of off balance, so his feet should always be a little bit kind of behind him, which they kind of are here, which is fine. What I might end up doing actually, because that's so extreme there, I might end up putting one or two of the hands down just for that section as he catches himself, to stop him actually falling. But yeah, let's take a look at rotate Y, because I think once I do this it's all going to start coming together. So you see we've got this kind of flat curve here as he kind of just stops rotating. That's not really what I want. I want him to keep this rotation up in this direction. You see how close he is to her, but he's meant to actually start moving over a bit more at this point, so I'm just going to maintain that for a second. Be a bit more like that kind of shape, and then I think that what that allows me to do then is to actually have him come forward and more to the side. So all this junk here I'm just going to get rid of. I don't want him too close to us, so maybe about there. And at this point he starts coming over a little bit sooner. I'm trying to get the back part of him round basically. Okay, now this foot here I think will just need moving, which is fine. He's off balance, so a foot could be quite a bit back, and probably a little bit more over to the side as well. Yeah, maybe even more. I can sort the clipping out in a second, but I just want to get the foot placement right. Okay. So it's probably a good idea to look at this from above to make sure his kind of base movement is definitely travelling in the right direction. So that's kind of working now because he's rotating. He's very static, so I need to kind of animate all this stuff in a second, but I think the base movement is actually kind of working. Yeah, you kind of see he kind of loses balance and he keeps going in that direction, which is nice. It's kind of what I wanted. Yeah, okay, that's not too bad. Okay, so the next step would be to get a bit of something in this spine here, because it's completely static throughout, without kind of messing the bite up. So what I'm going to do here, because I'm on FK spine, is do some counter rotation to kind of build in some C shapes. So basically he comes in this C shape, but I kind of want to reverse that, but then maintain where the neck is, and that'll kind of keep the centre nice and alive. Alright guys, so after quite a large fight with this dinosaur, I've managed to get this off-balance part looking pretty good. There's still a couple of issues with it that I need to fix, but yeah, the basics are in there. What was tricky about it was just trying to get the actual mechanics of this correct, because obviously he's travelling in two directions, so I'm kind of having to animate on two axes. I had to sort of get, you know, the hands involved as well, so you've got a hand plant there, another one there, so he's able to correct himself enough to stand up, but then he gets hit immediately by the spear coming through. But yeah, I'm quite happy with it. If we look at it at the perspective, you'll see there's still a couple of issues, but it's definitely a lot better than it was. Very tricky move, but you know, nice and challenging though. It's nice to have something that's, you know, this hard to do and kind of pushes me. It's good. So yeah, actually looks a bit better in perspective actually, so I might actually swing the camera around a little bit just to kind of show a bit more of this side. So yeah, it's getting there. There's a few issues to sort out in final polish, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. Cool, so I better have a look at her, because I've not really done any animation on her yet. So let's see what's going on. So we just got a simple jump over to the left. Okay, so with this I just want to basically make sure I keep this foot planted for as long as possible, because this is the one that's kind of kicking off. It's kind of weird how this foot scoops inwards as well. So yeah, I'm just going to stretch that and basically create a stretch pose for that leg as it kicks off. This one here, can we do this one? It's going to be a case of I get it over this way a little bit sooner. Yeah, so she kind of leads with this leg, so I'm just going to turn that one over. So yeah, mechanically that kind of makes sense. Could probably even push that one by a frame, just so this foot here kind of leads the action a bit more. Then this one's stretched, and then this one catches up. So what I need is for this one here to land a bit sooner. So that'll be there. Make sure I get my stretch pose on. Gonna add a bit of toe roll there just to kind of soften it all a little bit, and that way I can move that back by another frame. Okay, I'll check the curves of that in a second, just to make sure it's a nice curve in coming across, kind of following what the hips are doing. This foot here, I think is looking okay, but again I'm going to turn that to linear so that it hits a bit harder. Okay, so time to check the curve on this one here, on the cog. Just make sure we've got a nice shape here. So let's add a little bit more texture to this part, just keep her hips alive during the bit where she's kind of idling there waiting. Tiny bit of an up anticipation before the main anticipation, so she's going to come up a little bit, going gonna put another key here just to hold her in the down position a little bit longer, and then start to curve like this. Here's the main jump, so I'll define the apex right in the middle, and then use these two as my stabilizers, so give her a bit more hang time. Okay, then I probably want her to come down okay, so what, yeah, I can see what I need to do. This actually needs to be all the way over here to keep her up in the air a little bit longer, because at this point she should still be up in the air. Maybe it'd be about there. Okay. Yeah, looks a little bit strange at the moment. I think I've got a little bit of a kink in the, what would it be, translate X. Yeah, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to push this along a little bit more. Okay, now this foot here, you can see it just needs to come down a bit sooner. It's kind of just getting left there in a really awkward pose, so just going to move that over by a frame. I'm just going to take off another frame as well, and probably just reshape this foot so it's a bit nicer in midair. Okay, let's check the curve of this. Yes, this is a right mess. This basically needs to be the same kind of pattern as the hips as well. Just going to move that across a little bit. Okay, there we go. It's starting to look better. I'm still not keen about this back foot. It's a little bit of an awkward pose to kind of jump from. You see the way it sort of comes forward a bit too quick, I think, so that would be, yeah, this curve here. I'm just going to soften that just so it doesn't kind of fly forward. It's a bit more of a nicer blend. And if I've got any controls on here that sort of angle the foot, so it'd probably be the rock control, just to kind of just move this foot over a little bit, just so she's kind of balancing on a big toe at that point, which is fine because a lot of her weight is on the front, and that way I can just kind of do that and then do that. Make that leg shape a little bit better. And same here, I'm just going to move that across. Okay, now as she lands here, we've got a down position on the, sorry, wrong control up, cog. It should have a down position here, so yeah, this is where she kind of absorbs here, so I'm going to make that slightly lower there, slightly higher there, so she gets a little bit of a bounce and then comes to a settle before her next move. Okay, and then I'm going to feed that into rotate X and offset it, so as she comes down here I'm just going to move that across by a frame. She kind of moves her body over, so that's fine. At this point she's going to be rotated up, so I'm just going to offset that by a frame and then offset this by a couple of frames so that we get the translate hit its lowest point here, but her body's still rotated up, and then we rotate down a little while later just so it's not all happening at the same time. Okay, I'm just going to move that in a bit so it's not so extreme. A little bit of an overshoot here. Once I get this arm in IK it would make sense. Okay, and then she basically returns to her neutral pose here. Cool. Alright, so let's see how that's reading. Okay, not too bad. Cool, yeah, I'm quite happy with that for now. I'm going to get this arm in IK at this point. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is at around about this point, I'm going to key this controller and then I'm going to switch on the IK blend. Our arm's going to go off that way because we haven't moved it yet. But I'm basically going to hold this all the way through until about here, and then it's going to blend back to FK. Okay, then all I need to do is just move that IK wherever it's gone. I think that's it. Yep. Cool. So I've not used the IK yet, so there's no keys on it just yet. Okay, so I'm just going to find the position I want. Yeah, I think about there's good. Let's fix the pole vector, wherever that's gone. It's always a bit tricky to find the pole vector. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this arm's basically just going to be supporting her as her weight is on the front. Let's key that, and hopefully I get a nice blend. So her FA is going to kind of point towards it, switch into IK here, hits, do a bit of work on the shoulder there to stabilise it, and then as she comes up, yeah, I'm just going to blend it a little bit sooner. So I can do this in the graph editor. I'm just going to move this like this. So around this point we're going to be fully in FK. Okay, and the reason this is getting pulled up is because we haven't got a stretchy arm, so it's basically gone beyond the IK point. So I'm hoping I can just do that, and it's on the other side of the camera, so I think I'll get away with it. Just to stop the IK pop. And do it here as well. And there we go. Yeah. Blends out that quite nice, and then it's coming along that arc anyway, so that kind of works nicely. Cool. I'm just going to play it. Yeah, okay. Looks pretty good for a blend. Cool, right. Okay, so I'm just going to just have a quick look at this motion here, just to make sure it all kind of is working as she lands. Can add a bit of head overlap, I think, because at this point she's coming up. I'm just going to angle the head up a little bit here, because she comes down quite hard. I'm just going to offset that by a couple of frames and do a little bit of a rotation down. Just subtle stuff, but it helps kind of sell the weight. For this arm here, I just want to quickly check the camera to make sure that I'm definitely clearing the negative space in between these two. I might have to change the camera just a little bit, because yeah, I'm sort of, if I turn the lights off and we take a look at the silhouettes of all this, kind of hard to tell what's going on. They're kind of both crossing paths almost, so it might be a case that I just modify the camera a little bit just to kind of get a little bit of negative space later on. But yeah, I'll leave that for now, that's fine. Cool. What I do want to do is a little bit of overlapping action on this spear as it lands, on this spear arm. You see the way it's very rigid here. Like it's not reacting to anything that's just happened with her body, so it's going to select them all at the same time. I'm going to offset everything by a couple of frames so it kind of arrives a bit later. Okay, so that's going to be an up position there. That'll be a down position and that will be it returning back to neutral. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll move that along to keep it up a little bit sooner. So I'm going to shift that along by another frame. Okay, and then I'm just going to nudge that one down ever so slightly, and then the wrist down slightly more. Okay, and then I'll just offset, so I'll grab this one and this one. Because although the arm's under tension, that's a lot of weight coming down with that spear, so I do want to kind of sell the weight a little bit more of this. Okay, and then I'll offset the wrist by another frame here. So push that there, and then just break it down a little bit more. So change the pose there. So basically, as body hits here, arm catches up, wrist is the last thing to kind of arrive, so I'm just going to push that up. And then we get the reversal later on here of the spear, so we get a nice little wobble going down the spear here. Okay, I'm just going to feed this into the shoulder a little bit with the translation as well, just a little bit. So about here I'm going to translate it up. Hits the lowest point there, I'm going to do a reversal here, translation down and a slight nudge. Okay, and then bring it back a little bit there so it eases into the start of the throw. Cool, alright, let's check it in the camera. Okay, not too bad. Alright guys, so this is where I'm at with this shot now. Okay. So yeah, not quite halfway through the first pass, but quite happy with this first part. It's starting to come together nicely, so yeah, in the next episode I'll be working on her throw. And yeah, all this stuff here needs a lot of tidying up. It's very sticky in this area here, so I need to make this nice and smooth. Getting up onto the back, the tear out, the stab shouldn't be too bad. Need to add loads of texture to the dinosaur there, but not too far away from good first pass, and then I can start really working into it. Get it into Unreal, render it nicely. It should be a nice showreel shot. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a like, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.